In March, we took the South African government to court. This electricity crisis is a huge problem in South Africa. South Africa today is the most unequal society in the world. That's almost half the population that's not working. And those who are most affected by that are young people, and in particular, women. My name is Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. In March, we took the South African government to court over the fact that they were implementing this rolling blackouts. We said that this is a violation of the Constitution because in terms of our Bill of Rights, the South African government has to guarantee energy for certain critical sectors like police stations, like schools, and also public hospitals. Patients are dying in hospitals. Babies in the neonatal wards are dying because the ventilators stop working. Our electricity supply is provided for by a state-owned entity called Eskom. Eskom is 100% owned by the South African government. Now, our biggest challenge is that our government has been heavily influenced by neoliberal policies coming from the World Bank and the IMF, who want the South African government to privatize these state-owned entities. And so the South African government has started embarking on a process. The government has stopped spending money on doing proper maintenance in the coal-fired power stations of Eskom. People keep saying that having a state-owned entity is expensive, but we are arguing that it is much more expensive, it is much more costly to have rolling blackouts. I mean, the rolling blackouts mean that our economy is not growing. It's only growing at something like 1 to 2% per year. That's a disaster. There's no business that can operate with 12 hours of power cuts a day. How do you operate your business? What production is happening? And we are seeing many small and medium-sized companies just closing and shutting down and retrenching workers. Part of the second problem that feeds into this electricity crisis is that the South African government has been dictated to by Western powers who are saying, you need to stop relying on coal and you need to start relying on renewable energy. Even countries like Germany that have high levels of renewable energy, they still rely on coal and nuclear and gas as a backup to power their industries. But somehow the South African government has been misled to believe that they can power their industries on renewable energy. It's a bizarre, ridiculous, nonsensical notion. They have allowed these renewable energy companies, which are privately owned and are part of the privatization of Eskom, to play a role that is also affecting and not helping the power crisis. We cannot rush to stop our reliance on coal. The developing world, certainly Africa, are not the ones who are responsible for climate change. The biggest emitters of pollution are the developed world. We still need these fossil fuels for development. We still need to build our industrial sector. We need to build more manufacturing in the country. The United States has offered South Africa an 8.5 billion rand loan to stop using coal. We are calling on the South African government to reject the loan, because if we rush to accept loans, first of all, it's not going to stop load shedding. Secondly, we have to pay back those loans. Who's going to pay back those loans? Our economy right now is not growing. How are we going to be able to afford to pay back those loans? It means that generations of South Africans will be poor for decades. The Chinese government does not allow capital to dominate or to dictate the economy or economic policy. We think that the South African government should do the same. And this is what happens when you allow capital to just run rampant and not have any restrictions or limitations. You've got to have a balancing process. And what the SOEs did, the roles that they played, was to balance. They played a role of balancing the capitalist and ensuring that at the end of the day, the developmental agenda is implemented not the agenda of rampant profiteering for the benefit of, by the way, an elite minority of capitalists. South Africa is a country that has a very dark past. We have just come out of a system that we call apartheid, which is a legal form of racialized segregation, where the government implemented laws that discriminated against the majority of people who are black. So if you were, for example, black, you could not access our healthcare. Your educational system was deliberately made inferior. So most black people were not even able to access universities. We could not become doctors or nurses or engineers. And then in 1994, for the first time, we were allowed to vote. And in that vote, black government was elected under the leadership of the African National Congress.
This is one of the most important moments in the life of our country. I stand before you filled with deep pride and joy.
Even since then, we still have a lot of challenges. South Africa today, after that democratic moment, is the most unequal society in the world. We've got extremely high levels of inequality. The gap between the rich and the poor is very wide in my country. We are a country with extremely high levels of poverty, high levels of unemployment. The unemployment rate in South Africa is 43%. That's almost half the population that's not working. And those who are most affected by that are young people, and in particular, women. And in the workplace, you will find that there are situations where women are deeply affected, where, for example, they will experience sexual harassment, where bosses will demand sexual favors for jobs or for work, where bosses will discriminate against women for job opportunities, where the assumption is because you're a woman, you can't do it, you know. A more recent example is the auto company Ford. It's an American auto company. There is a worker who is being sexually harassed by her boss. Ford is refusing to take the necessary steps to fire this guy or to discipline him and take him through a proper process. It is our job as a trade union to raise these issues, to make sure that the public is aware about how some of these companies are mistreating workers. We were exposing the company for internal racist practices where they wouldn't allow, for example, employees to wear headscarves, which are a traditional thing in South Africa. It's bizarre that you operate in Africa, but you have a problem with African people wearing headscarves. We are the largest trade union in the country. We are representing ordinary men and women with children who care about a better life. I feel that NUMSA members are an inspiration, and it is the courage of the working class, their bravery, their militancy that has actually got me working in this space.